Today, I'm very happy to be joined by the Houston Texans insider for KPRC, NBC affiliate here in Houston, Aaron Wilson. Aaron, it's good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time out to do this. How are you, and how's it been covering the Texans so far?
Oh, doing great, Manav, and thank you for having me. Yeah, good to see you again. Last time I saw you was at the celebrity volleyball charity event over at Pitch 25. A lot of fun. And yeah, it's been good so far. They are not a winning team yet, but they're a relevant team. And I think that's an important distinction. I know that that's not something that you see in the standings or on the stat sheet, but the Texans do have some good young players, and I think that's why there's increased interest in the team after the last 3 years. Really, all I've really been writing about is a rebuilding project and nothing really too exciting to write home about, honestly. Think about last year, what was good, like Jalen Petrie, Damian Pierce, Jerry Hughes had a good season. There weren't a lot of things other than like Laramie Tunsil to talk about. And now there are a lot more things to discuss, and yeah, happy to get into it all with you.
Yeah, of course. I think you mentioned relevancy, and I think the Texans as a whole, they have a lot more players who are, I would say, more interesting to talk about. And they've started 0-2, but I thought they're still competitive in their 25-9 loss to the Ravens, where there were some positive aspects. Then we saw on Sunday they lost to the Colts. I think injuries have obviously been a major story for this team on both sides, whether that's offensive line or defensive in terms of safeties. Just want to hear your thoughts on the status of these injuries and I guess the impact on the performance that it's had for the Texans.
Right. Yeah, let's run them down. The latest injury is Tavier Thomas. He
Mhm.
had surgery on his broken hand. He broke a bone that's in between your middle finger and your ring finger. So Tavier has surgery, speedy recovery to Tavier, and I think he'll miss at least a week. The hope is that he won't need to be placed on injured reserve and that he could then play with a soft cast, as he did against the Colts and still played well. He was had a painkiller to numb the pain, and then he was able to get through the game. But long term, that wouldn't have been a good idea, so he needed to have surgery. Laramie Tunsil is the big one that people are asking me about. Laramie is day to day with this knee injury, and one of the things they do is platelet-rich therapy shots for players. Sometimes that can reduce the inflammation. He doesn't have anything major like torn ligaments or anything like that. It's an injury where it can be managed, but he has soreness. I think at some point he could need an arthroscopic knee procedure to like a minor cleanup type deal. But if he did do that in season, it could mean injured reserve, because usually it takes 3 to 4 weeks to recover from that. And big thing with Laramie is he really wants to play. I talked with him at the game on Sunday. It's disappointing and tough for him not to be out there with his brothers. He wants to be playing. And the trickle down effect is that we'll just go through the offensive line first.
Yeah.
So you had to move Josh Jones from left guard to left tackle. Josh is more of a right tackle or a guard type,
Mhm.
and he prepared to play guard and played there against the Ravens. Then he had to play right tackle. Now he's going to play left tackle. And my anticipation right now, unless Laramie miraculously practices on Wednesday, is that you'll see Josh again at left tackle. I don't think they have another option. Kendrick Green, the left guard, so he steps in because they just didn't feel like Michael Dieter played that well against the Ravens. And then it's center Jarrett Patterson, overwhelmed at the point of attack many times by Grover Stewart. You saw in the first play of the game, he gives up tackle for a loss on Damian Pierce, 3 yards.
Mhm.
And so that gets things off to a bad start. I thought he'd settle down after that, but Jarrett's been snapping well, and technically he's very sound, but he's having trouble dealing with these bigger nose tackles. And then over at right guard, Shaq Mason hasn't really graded out very high so far, but he's the only original starter that's still out there. He's the last man standing. I haven't really. It's kind of a gallows humor. I haven't joked with Shaq about it, but I mean, he is the last guy standing because they've already lost Scott Quesenberry and Juice Scruggs. Scott for the season, ACL, MCL tears, and then Juice Scruggs, you'll get him back likely after 4 weeks with the strained hamstring. Then over at right tackle, Titus Howard is still out with hand surgery, making progress. I think he could be back for the Atlanta game. And George Fant, I don't think George has played badly, actually. I think George has been solid at right tackle. He gets pushed back some, but he plays a little high in his pad level. But George hasn't been that bad. He's not the main problem. I mean, if you look at what's going on out there, it's a confluence of things. It's really a calamity situation for the Texans where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in terms of losing guys. I mean, if Shaq gets hurt, then they're down 5 starters. So it's very hard to run your offense, and it's admirable of CJ Stroud to have been as effective as he has been, considering he's behind this makeshift offensive line. And the other injuries, Jimmy Ward, he's close to getting back out there from the hip injury. I'm told that Jalen Petrie, there's a chance he comes back this week from the bruised lung. And, the other injuries, I think that's about it. Trying to think of anyone I'm forgetting about. It's mostly offensive line. It's, Eric Murray will miss this game likely with a concussion because, normally it takes a while to clear the concussion protocol. So we could be looking at, it could be Petrie and Ward, or it could be Jimmy plays nickel, and that's if they're back. And if they're not back, that's MJ Stewart and probably DeAndre Houston Carson, who played a lot in this last game, right after being up from the practice squad.
Yeah, so you had talked about Petrie potentially returning. Is there anything clear on Jimmy Ward? Is he kind of in the same, I guess, recovery in terms of when he'd come back?
Right. They were hoping that it would be a 2-week injury for Jimmy. There was never any hope of him playing in the first 2 games. So there's some chance that he could be back. But that was the original forecast for this hip injury. And with Jalen, obviously, when you have a bruised lung and you're dealing with your wind capacity and you're coughing up blood, it's not safe to play. It's not a matter of, can you play? It's that you can't play.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just a bit unfortunate that it's had to happen so early for this team, especially when you think that they have such a bright future. And you had talked a little bit about CJ Stroud earlier about just a great effort from him behind that pretty much what you would call a second string offensive line, and that's what's I think bothering Damian Pierce in terms of he hasn't had many holes to run through behind that offensive line. But do want to hear what you think about CJ Stroud, especially a lot of great things about him. Heard him during the post game press conference. People were very impressed with the way he was talking, and he had the best game I think for an Ohio State quarterback. Almost 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's the only quarterback with 600 yards and no interceptions so far. So it's been pretty good for CJ.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not a stellar history of Ohio State quarterbacks for all you Buckeye fans out there, but maybe he'll be the best Buckeyes quarterback ever in the NFL. So, we can hope so. I've covered some other ones, including a Heisman winner, Troy Smith, with the Ravens, but he wasn't like CJ. CJ has pinpoint accuracy. He has good footwork. He throws with excellent mechanics. He's able to read the field very well. He makes good decisions. He's smart. He learns from mistakes. I like his rhythm in terms of how he throws his wide receivers open. He leads them very well. He has really a thought of get down the field, not check down. He's aggressive, and he throws for lots of first downs. He has a lot of completions. I believe 18 of 10 yards or higher. That's a good percentage. He has yet to throw an interception. He set an NFL record. He has the most attempts for any player in NFL history without throwing an interception to start their career. That's outstanding. He also, you think about, he's 4th in the NFL in passing yards. So he ranks high in the whole league. And I believe he's 1st in the AFC as of today. So you think about CJ and where he ranks, he has been by far the best rookie quarterback in terms of throwing the football. The best running quarterback, obviously, is Anthony Richardson. Anthony, I think, was going to have a monster game if he hadn't had that concussion, and really looking forward to the matchups between Anthony and CJ in the years to follow, including later this year to close the season, Colts, and as they host the Texans to end the season in regular season. So what I think about CJ is he's still a work in progress in terms of some things about recognizing protections, recognizing the blitzes, recognizing what people are doing to him defensively. And at some point, there might be some tough games, but no one's perfect. I think he has a great attitude. You can see that kind of exemplified in his interviews. Very positive individual. He's overcome adversity. He's discussed that at length before, with the situation of his father being in prison and the struggle and the battles that him and his mother had to go through together. And, some of those things he had to do, other people didn't have to overcome. He had to get people to waive entry fees to Elite 11 tournaments, things like that, to be able to compete with the more privileged young quarterbacks, including Bryce Young. So, this is no silver spoon kid. He's someone that had to work to become a blue chip recruit. And it's really commendable what he's done. So, yeah, CJ entirely very positive, really has even exceeded the expectations based on what we watched in practice, where he had his moments. But I would say he's more of a gamer than a practice player, is my opinion right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think just in the first two games, you can tell that, this guy is going to be a successful franchise quarterback when you take a look at just what he's done over the first two games. And, like you said, exceeded expectations for sure, and everything. And I can't wait to see what he's going to do for the rest of the season. And, we had talked about the defense as well. Just want to hear what do you think? I think it was a little bit of a struggle for them early on, especially against Anthony Richardson while he was in the game. And you saw Gardner Minshew was able to get a few touchdowns. What do you think about that defense and I guess how they can improve for next week?
Right. Yeah, I was disappointed in the defensive performance. I think everyone was. They lacked energy. They didn't hit very hard. They also had some fundamental breakdowns. Probably the most glaring thing was that they never sacked either quarterback, and they had one quarterback hit at the beginning of the game, Will Anderson Jr. So they got locked up by that offensive line, and they didn't have an answer for Anthony Richardson's running. They didn't set the edge. They didn't tackle well. They failed in almost every category except for some things in coverage. I thought, Derek Stingley Jr. and Steven Nelson did well, but overall, not a good game. MJ Stewart, another member of the secondary, I actually saw him today at a charity event out at Rosa Parks Elementary, and I thought he played well. But the defensive line, where's the pressure?
Yeah.
The linebacking core, probably the most substandard group right now. Poor angles from Denzel Perryman on run support. I thought Henry To'oTo'o, the way that he played, that won't work in the NFL. You have to run through the block. You can't try to run around the block or spin around the block in the red zone. For him to turn his back and try a spin move against an offensive lineman in the red zone against Zach Moss, I mean, that is not how he's coached Alabama to play it. That's not how the Texans coach it. And although he's still listed as first in the unofficial depth chart, if he plays like that again, it won't surprise me if you don't see Blake Cashman back in there with Blake being healthy now from the hamstring injury. I thought that was poor. I know he's a rookie. I don't want to be overly tough on him, but that's not how you're supposed to play linebacker in the NFL. And they've got to get better at the position. It makes me wonder why rotate Christian Harris when Christian is the best athlete and kind of a guided missile out there, a guy that I think plays the game the right way. He's hard hitting. I would rather see more Christian Harris. I don't really understand that decision. It's something I probably would like to ask Matt Burke about this week and about the linebacking position. I think it's something that warrants maybe a closer look. So, yeah, those are some of my thoughts on the defense. I know there's some good things happening, but it was a step back, as DeMeco Ryan said, and he's very fair in his assessments. If you think about DeMeco, he's very honest. So if something's not good, he'll say it. And he's not throwing people under the bus. He's just being honest. And he was critical of the linebackers. He was critical of the defense in general. And that was not the way they played against the Ravens, against Lamar Jackson. This was really, I thought, rough out there. And Zach Moss did what he wanted to run the ball. So did Anthony Richardson. And they never played a glove on Gardner Minshew at all. So Minshew was able to get into a rhythm and give them credit. They all played well on offense, the Colts, and I thought Shane Steichen outcoached the Texans too. I think that put some of this on the coaching staff too.
Yeah, I thought, after the Ravens game, I would say I was pretty impressed by that defense. They played pretty well against Lamar, given it's the first game and stuff like that. But I think it was right. It was a step back. And I think when you look at the front of this Texans team, you kind of expect them to get to the passer a little bit more than, obviously, than what they did on Sunday, which was nothing. And I think you made a great point about Christian Harris. Would love to see him on the field a little bit more, maybe rotate those linebackers and see what you have in terms of depth. And I think hopefully they can improve this week. It's a tough game against Jacksonville, but we'll see what they can do. And I think one really good positive about the team as a whole, I think that wide receiver room, they're quite underrated, but they've been playing really good. I mean, you look at Nico Collins, 2 great games so far, really breaking it out, almost at 150 yards on Sunday with that touchdown, at 80 yards against the Ravens. I think him and CJ getting great chemistry. Same thing with Robert Woods, who's at 6 catches in both of his games. And then, of course, can't forget about Tank, who had his first touchdown, 75 yards and a touchdown for Tank. So I think that room as a whole, you have 3 great guys on there. So I feel like they're a little bit underrated.
Right. Yeah. I think when you think about there was a lot of complaining. Remember, why don't they have a number one wide receiver? Should they trade for Mike Evans? I mean, everything. Texans Twitter, as I like to call it, is a pretty reactionary place. And, I don't think any of them quite often understand the team is not one player away. They are several players away. This is really all about not just 2024, but 2025, when CJ will be in the 3rd year of his contract. And that's when I think you might see the Texans, if they continue to make some good moves, be a winner. And the team will look different by then. The nucleus of some of the veterans, some of them will age out or they'll move on or things like that. But the core of the Petries, the Stingleys, the Andersons, the Strouds, Dells, Nico likely are here. So in my opinion, people need to pump the brakes a little bit and really lower their expectations. The 6 wins, that's what I projected.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how realistic that is even anymore.
Yeah.
I think it looks more like, maybe they'll win 4.
Yeah.
And, that's how I feel about them today, is they're like a 4-win team. So, okay, well, what's the big difference? Not much big difference, right? Either way, you're not going to the playoffs. You're not 500. You're not really competing for anything. So I understand the team, they have to market it. They have to sell tickets. Even that didn't go quite as they'd hoped. They weren't able to completely sell it out. They did have sold tickets, but as far as people using their tickets, I've estimated anywhere between 40,000 and 50,000 people. Probably 50,000 would be a little high, but there were a lot of empty seats in the stands. So a lot of people that either purchased tickets didn't use them, and I wonder what it's going to look like. How many Steeler fans will be there
Oh, yeah.
in the 4th game of the season, even though it's going to be JJ Watt Ring of Honor Day, which will be a special day.
Mhm.
But yeah, I look at it and I think they've got a lot of work to do. And I think they realize that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough sledding for the Texans in general. And, I know people are excited, and that's good. Be excited, and that's fine. But you also want to be realistic. And, I think some of the things that are done as far as like social media with graphics and all this stuff, and people acting like CJ's in the Pro Bowl already, or just people are getting ahead of themselves. But that's why they're fans. I'm not a fan, I'm a journalist, so I look at it much differently. I'm not a critic. I'm more just, I'll tell you what I think and what I see. And big thing is you want to be just reporting on what's happening. And to me, the accuracy of where this team is, and the reality is that they're not even close. They have a lot of work to do, and I don't think there's any time for anybody to pat themselves on the back because of some good individual performances. But I like the wide receiver core. I like Tank a lot. I think Tank is tough. He has the right mentality. He has the right approach to the game. You look at Robert Woods. He maybe wasn't very impressive in the preseason. I don't know if he was really as enthusiastic about the preseason with him being a multi-year vet. And Nico, he looked like a number one, at least the Texans' number one wide receiver to me, the entire offseason. So everything we're seeing in these games is what we saw in practice.
Yeah, I think you have a couple of bright spots, but I think, obviously with you being around the team, you obviously know what's happening. And, with you, I think you understand where the Texans are at, is that, I agree, they're a work in progress. It's gonna take some time, but they still do have some bright spots, which is good to see. And I think looking at their schedule, I think, even I was thinking maybe 6 wins or something like that. Maybe 6 or 7. I don't know. That was kind of looking back, it's kind of a little bit too, I guess, positive, I guess you could say. But I think maybe 4 wins would probably be realistic. I mean, when I looked at their schedule, I think the teams that they're facing, I think it's going to be tough for them to try and pull out a win. Hopefully, they'll get a few more than we think. But I know you mentioned the Steelers are going to be coming into town soon. You have the Falcons. You have the Saints. I think both of those teams are 2-0. So it's not really an easy schedule at all. But hopefully we'll see them get a few more than we think. But lastly, before we go, just want to hear your thoughts about the NFL in general. Who would, I guess, your early Super Bowl pick be at this point?
Oh man, you think about the teams, I still think the Chiefs have a chance to get there. I think that, with Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, when those guys are healthy, and Chris rather just getting there after signing his big contract. So I think that the Chiefs are still the team to beat in the AFC. And when I think about the NFC, I look at a lot of teams. I still like the 49ers as a potential contender. I'm kind of feel like the NFC might be a little more wide open and some of the other divisions. And, I look at Dallas. I think Dallas, I know you're a Dallas, guy, at least a Dak guy. I still believe in Dak, and I think Dak will make some noise, and I expect the Cowboys with Micah Parsons and Dak to be heard from. So, yeah, maybe a Dallas Kansas City Super Bowl. So I think that'd be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. That would be interesting. And just actually one more question here for you before, and then
Sure, yeah.
yeah. I think it's week 3 is going to be a little bit tough for the Texans. I mean, the Jaguars, I think they're still a quality team, and you talked about Tunsil may not be back, and the offensive line. I mean, you have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen off the edge for those two. In Jacksonville, then you have Calvin Ridley this year for them. So I think it's going to be a lot tougher. And then I think with this offensive line, I would expect CJ to, get hit a little bit in this game for sure. So just curious to hear what you think about that.
Right. Yeah, I don't like some of those matchups, the ones you mentioned with the front seven. I think that it's a deal where they will have to kind of play the way they did last year, where they're able to kind of get in Trevor Lawrence's head a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you see good Trevor, it'll be hard for the defense. They might need some quick game out of CJ Stroud, get the ball out of his hands a little faster. And I don't think their secondary is that scary. I think they have some players like Andre Cisco. They have some guys, but I don't really see the Jaguars as this, super formidable team. I like some of the pieces they have. I like their running back, ATN. I think that they have with Ridley a real weapon there, a wide receiver. But the Texans corners are good enough.
Yeah.
That's the real equalizer for the Texans is their cornerbacks against Trevor Lawrence. And if they can get a rush, easier said than done, then, if Will Anderson goes back to playing the way he did against the Ravens, maybe we got a really close ball game.
Yeah.
So I think it's a game that they would have a chance in. I don't think they get blown out by the Jaguars. I think they're going to be in a close football game.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see that for sure. Historically the Texans have had the Jaguars number, obviously quite, two different teams at this point, but we'll see. We'll see if they can get back on top. Anyway, Aaron, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Great hearing your insight on the Texans as always, and we'll see what they do versus the Jags on Sunday.
Thanks, Mana. I appreciate you having me. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.